Well, g'day friends. Welcome to Dot Island. Although, it's not going to be Dot for too much longer. I'm about to transform this place into a truly epic landscape full of mountains and countryside and beaches and forests. I guess everything in between as well. Not to mention, we're going to be spanning across multiple islands and multiple countries. I did just say multiple countries. I've got a lot planned for this little dot. So, I should probably get to all of it. So, what's all this then? As you all know, we've just had the announcement that the region packs are going to be beginning to be released as of next week. We've got the French pack next week, followed by the Germany pack, and then after that, we've got the UK pack. And I, for one, and I'm sure you guys as well, are very, very, very excited for some new content, new buildings, just new stuff for City Skylines 2. And when I first got wind of it, I was thinking about how I could incorporate these styles within New Dollarton. How could they work within a city that's based in the US? And it was a bit of a stretch, but I thought maybe I could do like a French style district, or maybe some of the buildings could work. But it just feels like I'm not truly utilizing the greatness of these buildings. I feel like he needs to build something within that style. So then I thought, okay, maybe I could just do a one-off build, or maybe I could just do like just a couple little tiny builds somewhere. But to be honest, I'm not really a one-off build type of guy. You know, in terms of inspiration, this is the sort of thing that I get captivated by, and the things that I really am excited to build in. And this is, I feel like it's gonna be quite interesting. And it really just started off as something that I thought maybe I could just do as like a little project on the side while these packs are being released. But gee whiz, I've really gone down a inspiration rabbit hole, and this is now all I can think about. So what is all this? This is a map that I am basing on, and this is very fantasy. I don't want to go down too much of taking direct inspiration from places, but this is this corner here. This is France, Germany, UK, some other places. You know, this is an area that I think will be really interesting to capture on a single map. Not just that, an island, a couple of islands. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But something that I really enjoy about traveling, or even just looking at Google Earth and flying around, is just seeing how places are so different from one another, how a country can have such a strong architectural style, and then you can see similarities between other places, and then how even the environment makes those influences within those countries, or even how the environment changes over the course of a couple of kilometers, even the course of 100 kilometers. It's always the biggest rabbit hole for me, just seeing how places will change. Quite often I'll start at a place like France, and then I'll end up in China, and I'll just like fly across the entire region, seeing how the environment changes throughout that entire span. It's great. I love it. And that's what this map is going to represent, but not as big as that. It's going to represent multiple countries, but I don't really want to be too tied down from taking direct influences from particular places. And I say that because I think that one of my biggest regrets with New Dollarton, my other series that's set in the US, particularly within New York City, it's too New York. And so I don't have quite as much creative freedom as I would if I wasn't taking such direct influences from a particular place. So I'm going to stay pretty clear of taking direct influences from particular places, but I'll be taking little bits of pieces here and there. So I guess that's a pretty good reason why I've chosen to do a new series to kind of showcase these new assets. I could not use these assets. I am really excited to be using something completely different. These are all like creators that I am huge fans of. People who were making custom assets for City Skylines 1 for years. So I'm just keen to see their assets in this game and to just have a play around and see what we can make of it. Plus, you guys have been asking me to do a European build for so many years. I've had so many requests to do something based in the UK as well as like two separate projects, but I'm pretty much combining them, and I've never been more excited to do it. In terms of New Dollarton, we will actually have a couple of these region packs that are coming out that'll be perfect for New Dollarton, and I've even got an episode already lined up that I just need to figure out when to release that one. So it's not going anywhere, but I'll be honest, probably more keen to work on this at this moment, at least for a while, because this is more in line with what I am truly inspired by. And that's his bigger picture stuff, a map that I totally made. I'm taking a lot of ideas from what I've learned from New Dollarton and being able to put them into this. So to say that I'm excited for this would be a very big understatement. Now, why an island? It's like you don't know me at all. How dare you ask a question like that? You know I love islands. I come from an island. Maybe it's ingrained in my... I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I'm obsessed. But I just feel like when it comes to maps, I need to be able to build on everything that I can see. And I almost like the limitation of trying to squeeze all those different ideas into playable spaces that I can only build in. I'm actually a really big fan of the fact that you can create landscapes outside of the playable area, but the fact that they are super low resolution and you can't place any trees on them makes me kind of feel like they're almost unusable. I don't know, that's not an issue for anyone else, but for me, I like being able to use all spaces, or at least see like a physical barrier between those places. I don't know, I'm just a bit weird like that, but I also enjoy the challenge of trying to create giant mountains to feel like these are, you know, the Alps. These Alps are like so super far away from where the main city is going to be, and even further away from where the UK is, and trying to take influences from these landscapes and squeeze them onto a tiny space like this, super interesting. So I enjoyed the challenge, and I guess we should probably talk about that. So far, I've just been figuring out where the main large parts of the environment are going to sit. I want there to be a big portion of the island dedicated to mountains, and then we're going to have a whole bunch of little beaches and small hills, and I wanted to make sure we had some countryside to fit in some farms, and we've got the whole other island which is going to be dedicated to the UK. But I also wanted to change the map theme, which is something that I haven't done in City Skylines 2 yet, but this was something that made a massive difference. It's still not exactly what I want, but there's a lot of things that aren't exactly what I want. Speaking of which, I would absolutely love, and not to sound like a broken record, but man oh man, would I love to be able to change the ground color, because far out, that makes a big difference. And for someone who really enjoys making maps, it's a real struggle. Thankfully, we do have these network surfaces, and I do think that these are truly amazing. I think they're great for city building, and I think they're great for creating some pavement when you are building a city, but this is like not the tool that I want to be using to create beaches, but here we are. Now, if you are wondering what assets I'm using, I am using the Sully Surfaces, the network pack that is released for the beaches. I just think that the beach color for these ones are far better. I actually think there will be a couple of mods that you will need and some assets to download the map itself. I was going to make it totally vanilla, but I actually think that it turns out better when mods are present. I mean, that's pretty clear. I just think you have way more control. By the way, this is on Paradox Mods. I probably should have started with that. Actually, it's not on just yet. It'll be out probably later this week, because I have no idea what to name this. If you've got an idea for what we can call this island, these islands, this map, this whole region, and maybe this series, let me know, because how do you name something that it spans over multiple countries? I can't really quite figure it out. So names, welcome, please. The area that I'm currently working in, this is where the starting tile is going to be, and this is going to be a French city, at least a French town, inspired by a couple of these coastal places, but again, not locking myself into anywhere in particular. And I want this to be the border crossing, or at least the access point to the UK, the other part of the map where the UK is going to be. And I'm still trying to figure out how people are going to make the journey between the two places, and I'm thinking there could be some sort of train line, there could be a highway that goes underneath, or there could be purely just by ship. That could just be the only way you can get across there. Ideas welcome. But I'm keen to see what sort of historical French village that I could create with these new assets. They definitely look more inspired by Paris, which I'll be taking, I guess, some inspiration from, but I am more keen to kind of just do my own thing. And I also really like the idea that there is some sort of large amounts of traffic coming through this area, maybe kind of like bypassing this town, because I think it's going to be too many people actually making the journey across, at least when we finally get that outside connection. I also really like the idea of having this river that stretched throughout this European side of the map, and even though it's probably like a bit disproportioned from, I guess, what you'd expect from an island of this size, but we are going for a very skewed scale on this map. You know, this is not going to be something of true realism and true scale. This is going to be more fantasy, and in fact, this map is very fantasy-esque. The types of designing of this map that I'm doing is like, it's not very realistic, but I do kind of like that portion of map making where it's very much squeezing too many concepts onto the one place, but for some reason it does work when you kind of play around with the scale a little bit. So for instance, these mountains that I will be putting more detail into in just a moment, and these ones down the very southern point of all of this, you know, this part down here, this could be like the southern portion of France where the architecture and even the landscape changes so dramatically. Like, I was even thinking that we could even change the roof colors of these assets using the recolor mod, and that would totally capture the Mediterranean influence on the French architecture, well, at least as much as I could probably do within these sort of assets. But that could be a lot of fun, and you know, something I could play with. But then I'd have to change the ground color because the ground color is totally different to just this green grass. It's a little bit more dry and a bit more arid. So I don't know, a couple of ideas, and I guess we can see what happens when we get there. But these mountains are definitely out of proportion in comparison to how big this map is. But I think that when you are playing with these sort of perspectives and this sort of scale, it does kind of work. I'll have to show you a little bit better in the live play at the end. After all that work in the southern part with all those mountains, I wanted to do something a bit different up north. And I'm not like super duper sold on what I've done up here. I feel like, again, the limitations of the map making within this game have definitely held me back here, but it's definitely a concept, and I reckon we'll come back here and maybe work on some of these areas, at least the landscape. But I wanted to change it so that it felt a little bit more marshy, a bit more swampy, vaguely inspired by this part of the Netherlands, and then also parts of Germany, like loosely, and a little bit left to be desired. And I'm kind of keen to get back here and work on it. But these sort of areas, they're like less important because I don't see myself working up here anytime too soon. Whereas those other areas, I wanted to put a bit more detail into it because I can see them being fleshed out sooner than later. But what I do think works is it does give a bit more reasoning behind that river that stretches through this map. And it also kind of creates this different type of environment that we don't really see anywhere else. So we'll be back here. Originally, I was thinking that this is where the Germany pack would be featured, and we could do something of a city inspired by German cities or towns, or even something of like a coastal town that we could do up here, and could have like some sort of giant port or something like that. Could be really interesting, but this could actually be better used for maybe something of the Eastern Europe pack that'll be out a little later. And then the Germany pack, I think, might be more interesting to do in an area like this. Yes, these mountains. Loosely, and man, I say loosely, very loosely, but loosely inspired by the Alps. We could use tons more space, and we could use some variation in the way these look. And I reckon we'll have to come back down here and detail them up at a later point. But I wanted to create some form of mountain range that we could do very different types of architecture and kind of like snake some little villages and maybe even like a town or a little city in this little space. I think that'd be super nice. And just those windy paths and those, you know, those train lines that snake in and out of these mountains and the valleys, lovely. So I wanted to get into this, but admittedly, didn't give myself a huge amount of room to work with, but a couple of ideas that I wanted to actually fit into this area. So I wanted there to be a nice little valley that kind of went through some of these mountains. I also wanted there to be a bit of a stream that kind of maybe was the catalyst for some of these little ridges and, you know, something that we could actually create some farmland in between here at some point. And then I also wanted there to be a large mountain, like the largest one of all of them, and not being like the focal point, but being something that is always present, like a big mountain that kind of sits somewhere. Jeez, I am so predictable at this stage. You guys must know me to a T. Now, you might be wondering why I've chosen to do all this by hand rather than working with any sort of height map, because that would have probably made making mountains easier, and that would be true for City Skylines 1, but I'm not sure if that's the case for City Skylines 2. At least what I saw from other tutorials, it kind of felt like more effort than it was truly worth. Plus, I'm also not that happy with the way that the imports look. I feel like the mountains are always too rough or too jaggedy and aren't really exactly what I want. And I kind of wanted to see what I could do with just the tools that we had. And at the moment, these mountains look pretty average. They do get a whole lot better with time. I just got to get into some of the finer details. And even after recording all of it, I still want to get in there and really just see what I can do, work some magic, change some colors, all that sort of stuff. But that's what we're really missing. Some changing colors because, you know, the elevation of mountains really changes the way that they look. And even the snow effect. I mean, as much as I would love to see snow in these mountains, still not hugely excited about the current snow situation. So I think we'll just see how that looks at a later stage. So it took a little bit of time, but I felt like these mountains were really starting to take some good shapes, and I was happy with the general idea of where they were sitting. However, because I'm a silly bugger and I'm stuck in my ways, I wasn't like super happy with the shape of the map as a whole. For some reason, I know that it's really silly, but I like it when the islands don't feel like they're squared off, you know, because quite often when you are working on these maps and doing an island, at least, you square them off because you're trying to use as much space as possible. So I didn't love the angle of this mountain sitting in there. So I decided to instead create this kind of waterway-esque area for some reason. And I've done that as well because it kind of gives us more options in terms of the types of landscapes we can take inspiration from. You know, like areas like this might be kind of fun, or areas like this could be really cool. You know, they're like really picturesque area. We've got these waterways and these giant mountains. I like that. So this mountain is now just kind of on its own little island. And again, this is very much a fantasy map. This isn't anything too grounded in reality. But I like that it gives us more options, and I also like the fact that from angles, you can't even tell that that water is there. So it's almost like this false, not perspective, reality? It's something, it's like a false something, where it feels like it's connected, but it's not really. So when you look at it from certain angles, from the majority of angles, it will always look like that this is just some giant mountain range, and this mountain is far larger than it really is. But really, it's just proportioned differently. You can't see the water down below, and you're kind of tricked into thinking that there's more to be seen, but really there's maybe less, or maybe there's more, but less of what you expect. Do you know what I'm trying to get at? I'm also using a bit of false perspective by putting smaller trees higher up on the mountain, and then lower down we're using those big oak trees and some of those tall spruce ones. In fact, I'm using a lot of these spruce and oak ones, and it's mostly because I do think that they have the best colors in terms of the trees. It can be a little bit tricky pairing up the different types of trees, and I think that these ones do pair up fairly well. So that's the sort of trees that I've gone for, but I think I would like to mix it up a little bit more when we do start to branch out into, a little bit of a pun there, branch out into some other areas. But for now, I reckon we'll just keep to these guys. And pretty much my technique here is just to go pretty hard in the amount of trees that I'm using, and then I will go back through and just remove the areas that I think don't really need trees, or I'd like to be placing down smaller bushes, and just remove them like that. I don't know if this is like the best way of doing things, but I do think that it is a much easier way of tackling large areas of forest like this. And then for other areas, I'm just adding in clusters of trees, mostly around the valleys or around rivers or over mountains and hills, just because I feel like these are areas that are probably not going to be developed up. And then the other little places around the map just kind of feel more like, I don't know, it kind of gives the illusion of farmland and built up areas, even though it's not really. Plus, it's a bit unmanageable to do so many trees on the map. I think that would totally tank the performance. And with the trees down on the European side of the map, it was time to start terraforming the UK. Oh, that sounds a bit evil, doesn't it? It's time to start terraforming the UK. Ha ha ha. I don't know, that just sounds a little bit evil. But regardless, I'm going to not show you that, because I think I'm just going to dive in and we'll do a bit of a fly around and I'll show you how the UK looks. And I'll explain a little bit more about this series and some of the other ideas that I have. Got a couple of extra mods. We've got water visual tweaks, which is making a world of difference. We've got some clouds rolling over the top, and I've just been tweaking some visuals, and I think it's starting to look pretty lovely. Obviously, quite a few changes have gone on behind the scenes, quite literally behind the scenes, because behind me we do have the UK, which I do need to show you guys, because I don't think I've actually shown you what any of that looks like. And yeah, we've got some roads down here too. So a little bit of a tour, and I also need to fly around and just check out and see if there are any problems going on, because you know, this map did come together fairly quickly, so I feel like not everything is going to be totally to my liking. You know, obviously that is not to my liking, and I feel like that's a little bit awkward. So I will go through and change a couple of bits and pieces here and there. So just bear with me as we do a bit of a fly around. But I feel like things are starting to look pretty good, even though we could really use a bit of a change in color in terms of some of the textures going on. But hey, that's fine for now. I think the beaches just alone making a huge difference. But you probably want to see the UK, don't you? And we do need to call it something different than the UK. We need to give this whole map a whole new name. But this is it. This is what I ended up coming up with. Nothing too crazy, nothing too revolutionary. It's really actually quite a bit hillier than I probably need to be. And I'm sure when you guys, that was a late night decision, I think. Yeah, when you guys get your hands on the map, you'll probably realize what the gradient of all the hills and the landscape are really like. It's probably a little bit hillier than you probably expect, but hey, I think it's going to work pretty nicely. And already I can see that I need to go through and just smooth some of these edges, which I didn't think were going to really matter, but yeah, there's a couple of bits and pieces that are looking a bit here and there. Not quite as lovely as I expected. But check this out. I was really just loving some of the erosion effect I was creating with some of these cliff fronts. And I think that this is going to be just a really nice place just to either build up or have a couple of train lines or just some farmland. But I feel like that has turned out pretty nice. Obviously, we do need to add in a little bit of details here and there, but I also like just kind of keeping it a bit more bare bones. But look at that. Love the light shining on that. Oh man, that's truly lovely. And then all around here, you can see, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a hilly area, but you know, a bit of hills, kind of fun to work with, I reckon. Man, these beaches, a little bit bodgy in places, but hey, I do plan to work around this whole area and add in all those details when we finally work on it, which is a little whiles away. So yeah, we've got a little bit of time to work on the rest of it. So I've just tried to create some points of interest for the landscape. We do have this little plateau up here, which I think would be quite lovely to work around. You can already imagine a couple little farmlands just sitting down below here and a little highway stretching through. You can see where some of the bushland is, some of the forested areas, I should probably say, because I guess we are working in the UK. Got to change my language, don't I? But I've pretty much just done it all on the higher areas. So where some of the hills are, that's where some of the actual bushland is. Nah, I'm sticking with bushland. Started to play with some of the water tools just to create some ponds and larger lakes, and I wouldn't mind this being a little bit larger and actually showing where it might trickle into some of these valleys. But yeah, like I mentioned before, the UK side of things is something that I will be working on much later on, and well, actually not that much later on. Those packs aren't too far away, but definitely not on the highest of priorities. I think that I need to work on the European side of things, and then we'll get into some of these parts. And when I say get into some of these parts, I reckon the first town we work on will probably be somewhere around here, which is why more detail has been added to some of these areas, because I'll be working here a little bit sooner, especially when we add in some sort of connection between the two areas. I'm still trying to figure out what on earth that's going to look like, because for the longest time I was under the impression there was in fact a highway that stretched between the UK and France, but apparently not. Apparently there's a train line and then that's it, and some boat connections. So I don't know, I'm kind of tempted to keep it like that too, or we drag out a highway. We do already have a highway here, but we can hide him into some sort of harbour, some sort of port that will sit in this little spot. So that could be kind of fun, just to try and make it look like there's some sort of connection there. Maybe even bringing over some cars that could be all hidden within the port. Just a couple of ideas. I would love to hear from you guys, so please do let me know. And already I can see some problems. These little lines over here, look, I'll talk about them in just a moment, but first let's talk about some of these roads. Look, I really just did the absolute barest of bones, because I don't even know if I'm going to be starting like this. I haven't really thought too much about how I'm going to start, but it's not really going to be centered around a highway. That's really just dragged out for anyone who downloads the map, because I know that they'll probably be wanting something like this. So I just dragged out the highway very, I mean, it's a pretty piss poor effort, to be honest. This road down here, this is probably more what I'll be starting on, because, you know, this would have been a town that would have been established around a little road like this, probably connecting up some fishing villages and some ports, and then these places would have just very much expanded out from there, and then the highways would have been dragged around at some point after that. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't half tempted to center my very first European city around a highway just to see your faces. But no, I'm not going to do that. It is just there because I think that some people would probably like to see it, but it's just a little connection. Plus, we do need people to actually make the journey into the map. That is the only reason why we have a highway connection in the first place, because I don't know, don't really want to risk to see what happens if we don't. So he's just there just to see how he goes. But I think that kind of gives us a good starting point at least. But that is it in terms of any sort of outside connection. Nothing in terms of a train line. I think that is something that'll be just dragged out at a later stage. So this is pretty much all you got. And I feel like it's a pretty good start. Speaking of start, these are our starting tiles, and as you can see, they are not squares. No, I have opted to make my own tiles, which is something you can do, but I'll be honest, I did do a far better job before, and then I went to go save it and it crashed. So I lost a lot of work, and creating these custom tiles is actually kind of annoying. So the second time round, I did a very, very half-assed job. Like, some of them are going to be ultra weird, some of them don't make any sense, some of them need to be kind of re-dragged out, so that's an area that I need to fix up. Like, this is a nightmare. So I'm sorry, it's really not as amazing as you probably thought I was going to get into. It was at some stage. I was really dragging them out lovely, in a very lovely way, but after losing about an hour and a half work, I really was just like, you know what, this is just going to be how it is. It's kind of just a whatever job. But I have gone through and made sure that if you are going to buy up some tiles, they do make a bit of sense. So, well, actually, I don't know if it makes sense, but might give you a bit of pleasure knowing that you are, you know, buying up the lake, or, you know, the headland, or you might even purchase that part of the headland and, you know, miss out on a little shop there. You know, there's little parts that I feel like do make a bit more sense than other areas. So it is like a bit tailor-made, and it might add to the game experience if you do download the map, but yeah, it's not as wonderful as I truly imagined, but hey, that's just how it is. Something else that I've done is I have gone through and just added more detail to some of these mountains, particularly this one in the distance, which when you hit the when you get the sun hitting in the right direction, it really just creates that lovely effect where you've got these little ridges down here. And it took a little bit of time, but I feel like it has come together pretty well. I could definitely go through and add in some more of that effect on some of these other mountains, but I'm getting to the point where I probably need to start playing around with some of these assets, because otherwise we're not going to have a city to build in time when that pack releases. So I think I probably just need to put a pin on how much I'm putting into this map and actually get to building. But I think that I will probably come through on my own save game, and I was very tempted to do it on the actual map itself, but like I said, I felt like I did need to put a pin in it and get to the building process. But I think we can go through and add in some of those extra details. It's not going to be perfect, and this is absolutely not what I want to be doing. I'd much prefer to have a brush to be creating effects like this, and that is not even what I want. But I think that we can go through and use these tools to add in some of these effects, and I reckon it's going to just make this mountain feel and look far larger than it really is. Just make it look like some distant mountain with, snow on the top, or just slightly different colors going on. Like stuff like that could, geez, not like that. But you know what I mean? There could be a whole lot more we could be doing down here. So, just some things to work on in the future, and I am pretty excited to be working on it at some stage. So now that the map is finished, well, at least pretty much finished, let's talk about some of the builds that we're going to be doing. Obviously, this is where the very first town is going to go, and this would be a French city. It'll start off as a town, and it's going to be a connection to whatever port and whatever harbor we have over this side. This will be where all the industry will sit, and then we'll have some sort of connection, probably through this road here. And I reckon this will be a pretty historical place. We'll have to see what we can do with some of those new assets, but I reckon they're going to be a lot of fun to play with. So we'll do something around here, and then I reckon we'll continue to establish more towns and more little villages and just bits and pieces throughout here. All this area is going to be farmland. Actually, let me just quickly show you. Sorry to just burn your pupils with this brightness, but here are our resources. We've got a lot of fertile land. In fact, pretty much everywhere where it's just hills or flat, it is all going to be fertile, because this is how this is how land works. To have it, the default with all the other maps within City Skylines to, just little pockets of areas that are very much randomly placed all over the place. No, you've got plenty of fertile land, and I've also tried to add in a fair amount of other resources, all sprinkled around these mountains. Probably the one that we have the least amount of is oil, and that's only in a couple of little areas like this. But even that, you've still got a fair amount of. So it's going to be kind of fun just to try and navigate where to build some of those areas up, because I haven't really dived into much of that side of things. So that'd be kind of fun. We've also got some pockets of water as well, so just sprinkled them around all over the place, not thinking too much about where some of those things go. So that's where we'll start. Of course, we do have the Germany pack, and I have left a couple of areas where we could get into, but I actually think it'd be really fun to do something that's up in the mountains, and then that'll give us a bit of variation with the sort of things that we're building, and even get into some of the detail work around there too. And then obviously we get into the UK side of things when that pack drops, and we've got a couple of options around here, but I reckon the first one will be somewhere in this little area, and that'll be our connection between Europe and the UK. So that'll be a lot of fun. That is honestly the thing that I am the most excited about. I am feeling really inspired to build something based on the UK at the moment, so that is something that I am super excited to finally get into. And guys, I think that's pretty much it. Here's the map, and it's come together far quicker than quite a lot of other maps that I've put together. I do put in more effort and a lot more thinking time and planning and more detailed time when it comes to other ones, but this was kind of fun just to try and see how quickly I can put together a map, and I'm feeling pretty happy with it. It's kind of ticking a lot of boxes for me. There are a lot of things that I want to do a bit differently, and if I had time and more tools to use, I'd definitely go through and add in some other bits and pieces, but this is getting me extremely excited for this new series. So, you know what? I'm just gonna finish this up and dive in and start building that little French town. But guys, that is it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for watching. The next one will be out on Tuesday, which will feature, of course, all those new French assets. And I really can't wait to get into it all. And I just want to say a big thank you all for watching and a massive shout out to my beloved patrons who are making videos like this possible. Homemade Cook, Dancing with Wolves, Eduardo Ingleus, Cesare Grossi, Wang Peter, W Tiger TW, Green Reen, Zach Thibault, Michael Ferry, Edward Ritchie, and Eckhart's Ladder. Cheers, legends. See you all on Tuesday.